This is Lessons in the Challenges of Leadership, the series that enables managers to achieve the remarkable. Podcast, video, short reads. Conceived, developed and presented by Siebert Neathling.
You might be familiar with the Hermann Brain Dominance Index, or HBDI. It's a well-established instrument to determine thinking preferences based on neuroscience. It describes 4 preferences: analytical, experimental, relational, and practical. Now, there's a lot to it, but here's a breakdown based on my experience. I often have to write proposals and pitch for work, and in a pitch session, I get asked many different questions. If someone asks, "On what do you base your approach? What is the evidence?" I know I'm dealing with an analytical person, one who combines intellectual and rational thinking to problems. They value quantitative data, are fact-based and logical. And in my answer, it would be best to focus on the intellectual and the rational elements of my proposal, cite some research, give examples of previous success, provide some accurate data. I'd include a graph or two in my pitch. On the other hand, if someone asks, "How does this relate to the big picture?" If they want to see an overview and are not too interested in the details, and especially if they are looking for fresh thinking, I am probably dealing with a so-called experimental thinker, someone who combines the intellectual with the intuitive and who is holistic and integrating in their thinking. I would give them a high-level summary, focusing on what makes my proposal unusual and interesting, but also showing how my approach fits into the bigger scheme of strategies and priorities. I'd show them a diagram illustrating how everything connects. But if someone asks, "How would this impact our staff? Who have you consulted? Who would need to support this?" I am dealing with a relational thinking style, someone who combines the intuitive with the instinctive and is highly focused on people. They value interpersonal relationships, feelings, and emotions. And in my pitch, I would show that I am sensitive to how people would respond to my work and demonstrate how I would include people in my solutions. I'd give them some quotes from satisfied clients or images of collaborative sessions. Finally, if someone asks, "How would you manage to complete this work in the time frame? What resources would you need? What are the risks, and how would you mitigate them?" I am most likely dealing with a practical thinking style, someone who combines the instinctive with the rational, who is organized, sequential, planned, detailed. If they're not convinced that the project can be done as proposed, I won't win the work. Then I'd give them Gantt charts and project plans to persuade them. Now, all of this relates back to the communication model from episode 22. We're getting the best out of our receiver by understanding our receiver's preferences. It is easy to get this wrong. You might be a relational thinker and use people-based arguments to persuade someone. But if you know they are analytical, you are far more likely to succeed if you provide evidence and data. Of course, if you don't know what you're dealing with, make sure there is something for everyone in your communication. That is why my work usually includes data, diagrams, evidence of consultation, and a Gantt chart. I've used the example of a pitch proposal, but in leadership, this approach has broad relevance. If you want to achieve buy-in for change, for example, optimize the likelihood of a positive response from your receiver by explaining the change in a way that they can relate to. I once saw a brilliant rollout of a new IT platform, and the excellent CIO and his team held several briefing sessions where they started by listening to the people there. They took great effort to understand the very human anxieties about the change. They also humanized the troubleshooting system by profiling the actual human beings who would staff the system. For the rationals, they provided data and evidence of the success of the system in other organizations. And for the experimental thinkers, they focus on the overall gains achieved by the new system and the way it integrated many previous systems. And for the practicals, they gave a detailed roadmap of how the change would be implemented and how risks were going to be mitigated. So to come back to our communication model, make yourself the best sender you can be. Encode the message clearly in an appropriate medium and using the best structure possible given the nature of the message. Strengthen the message using the tools we discussed in episode 23, and then get the best out of the receiver by considering thinking styles. But there is one more bit of knowledge that would help you with your leadership communication, and this time it is not from modern psychology. We go back more than 2,000 years to Aristotle and his approach to persuasive communication. He says that persuasive communication combines three modes: ethos, pathos, and logos. If you don't have all three, you are less persuasive. Now, these are Greek words, and ethos relates to credibility. If you are not credible as a communicator, you will struggle to be persuasive. Now, credibility comes from your preparation, the quality of your research, your endorsements, and evidence of past success. Logos refers to the logic of your argument. Construct your argument carefully, taking your audience on a step-by-step journey. Use data and evidence where you can. Give compelling reasons. But ethos and logos are useless without pathos. And pathos relates to how people feel about your argument. You only have to watch spectators at a sporting event to see that humans are passionate about things, even about grown men running around chasing an oval or round inflated plastic object. People scream and groan and celebrate and remonstrate loudly. We are an emotional species. We feel things, even about ideas. Our pathos drives much of our political discourse, our affiliations to social groups, and even our investment decisions. The best persuasive communication does not rely on logic alone, or on logic and credibility alone, but on credibility, logic, and feeling. Just think of the great speeches you have heard, political, religious, at weddings or funerals or birthdays. If you acknowledge that people respond with feelings, you are much more likely to craft effective communication. At the start of the 3 episodes on communication, I expressed reluctance about including the theme amongst the challenges of leadership because it is such a meta skill. It underlies success in all the other skills. And we have only scratched the surface here. I strongly recommend that you do more research. Be diligent in improving your leadership communication. Your great ideas deserve to get mileage, and your meaningful leadership communication deserves to be impactful. This is not just the stuff of movies and political rallies. In my time, I've seen a leader passionately defend his people in a political inquiry. And I have seen a senior leader get down from a stage and bring her people around close to her and in a gentle voice share her vision of a better organization. And I have seen in my own team a leader dealing with the final meeting of a closing business with incredible empathy, sensitivity, and dignity. I've seen a group of people leave an after-dinner speech and ask for the next day's conference agenda to be changed so they could address the issues of their organization with greater urgency. Good communication matters. The next episode is the last in this series, and we'll devote it to resilience. See you then.